we are to be shaped like the cross. We are to be cruciformed. And I don't mean the church building literally shaped like the cross, but that the way that we live our lives, both individually and as a community, that it reflects that of the love and the sacrifice of the cross. And today I'd like to suggest that a bit of our purpose comes from this idea that Jesus offers us, that we are the salt and the light of the world. And when Jesus says this, Jesus says, y'all, all y'all, are light and salt. This is the beginning of Jesus' ministry. This comes from the Sermon on the Mount at the very beginning. He's speaking to the disciples who he's just picked and a crowd that is already forming, coming to him because they are in great need of things. Many of them are the bottom of the heap. And they are coming and listening to these words and hoping to be blessed. And Jesus says, you are the light of the world. You are. Not you will be someday, or you should be, but that you already are. Having that light and that salt innately and within us has nothing to do with what we do, has nothing to do with some blessing that we've earned. It's simply because we are beloved children of God. We are the salt and the light. So let us for a moment explore what salt means. Of course, back in the day, refrigerators were not a thing. And so people had to get creative of finding other ways to preserve their food, often done through the use of salt. So salt had this idea of being a preservative. The things that were necessary for the sustaining of life came in a way because salt was able to preserve those things. So in a way, God is asking us, how do we preserve things so that the things that are necessary for life can be there? And there's also a bit of joy in being salt. Having learned how to cook some Indian food, you throw in 10, 20 different spices, but you'll quickly learn that those spices have no power in and of themselves. They need salt. Salt is what activates those flavors. Salt is what makes flavors in food come alive. There's a joy to that, a sense of celebration and creativity in that. It's not all a hard work, but there's also play involved. Salt also helps our human bodies when we're dehydrated. Used to be a runner, knows how important when we started to cramp, having some salt intake was necessary for our bodies. Salt also has this way of calling attention to the things that are wounded. Has anyone accidentally ever gotten salt on a wound? It's painful. It's really painful. Salt has a way of calling attention to things that are in pain. Now, my proposal for us to ponder today is this truth that salt does not exist for itself. See, salt doesn't really do much by itself. It is when salt comes in contact with something else that salt's power comes alive. Salt, when it comes in contact with the meat it's trying to preserve, or the flavors it's trying to bring out, or the pain that it's trying to draw attention to, it is when it comes in contact with it. So individually and collectively as a community, to be salt means that we don't exist just for ourselves, but that we exist for something greater. And it is when we come in contact with those greater things that all that we are really begin to be activated. And so I think it is worth us pondering as a community, as Iona Hope. How do we make decisions? How do we decide what ministries to focus our time and attention in? Knowing that we don't exist simply for ourselves, but we exist for all the things that we come in contact with. In part, that is how we come in contact one with another. But then it's also the world around us and what happens when we come in contact with that world. Jesus says that he comes to fulfill the law and not to abolish it. And this is a little side note, but I think it helps fill all of this out. Pun intended, you'll see in a minute. The law and the prophets, in a sense, were like the sleeve of a coat. It's the idea, it's the idea of the kingdom of God, but it is not God's kingdom in its fullness. As Jesus comes, it's like Jesus is putting his hand in that sleeve and filling out, fulfilling what God has always desired. This concept of shalom, of peace, of prosperity for all, of well-being for all. Jesus is filling that idea out. And so basically through this idea of salt, through what Jesus is saying here, and then if we look at Isaiah, it's all about how we fill that out. How when we come in contact with the world around us, we realize we're not doing it for ourselves, but we are doing it for the world that we come in contact with. Isaiah's reading today, we hear the people saying to the prophet, "Why do we fast, but God does not see? Why do we humble ourselves, but God does not notice?" It's because they were doing it all for themselves. As the prophet reminds, "Look, you serve only your own interests on the fast day and oppress all of your workers. You fast only to quarrel and to fight and to strike with a wicked fist. Is not this the fast that I choose, to loose the bonds of injustice, to let the oppressed go free, to not share your bread with the hungry, and when you see the naked, to cover them?" Our spiritual practices that we take on, whether it is fasting or another form of prayer or simply coming here on worshiping on a Sunday morning, these spiritual practices are not meant to be in and of themselves the point. They are meant to transform us so that when we come in contact with the world too can be transformed. That is what it is about. If we are fasting so it puffs us up or eases our anxieties in certain ways, it doesn't do much. But if we are fasting to center ourselves, to connect again with God, or to be in solidarity with those who do not have food, then that changes us so that when we come in contact, we can be the activating agent. Isaiah's passage then says, when you do this, when you take on these spiritual practices not for yourself but for the world, then your light shall break forth like the dawn, and your healing shall spring up quickly. Jesus also tells us that we are the light of the world. I have a 4-year-old. I talk about my kids all the time. They're my life. My 4-year-old right now is in that phase where he hates the dark when he's going to sleep at night. I think it's partially a delay tactic. But he will see shadows and he will say, "What's that?" and start to pretend like he's getting a little anxious. And so I pull out my cell phone, hit the flashlight, and I illuminate that pile of clothing on the chair that I haven't put away yet. And so he can see that it is nothing but a pile of clothing that his mother has not yet put away. Nothing to be afraid of. The power of light to illuminate what is in the dark. Sometimes it is simply a pile of clothing. That can be scary. But sometimes there's things in the shadows that do exist, and that we as a community have the power and the ability to be the light and shine our light on that, to expose what lurks in the darkness, the things that are not of God, the things that take us away from filling out the vision of God's kingdom, the things that distract from shalom. Those things exist in our world, and we as light are called to expose it. Speaking of my kids, at night we often sing Jesus songs at bedtime. And one of those songs that my kids have learned to love is "This Little Light of Mine." Now, they like the first verse, but they really love the verse that we didn't sing today. "Hide it under a bushel. No, I'm gonna let it shine." As you can imagine, you know why 2 and a 4-year-old love that song, because they love the two-letter word, no. But as we've been singing it this week, it's had me thinking about this whole don't hide your light under a bushel. Now, first off, bushel baskets are highly flammable. If you hide your light under it, you're probably going to burn down your house. And unless you're looking for an insurance claim, it's probably not a good idea. So hiding your light under a bushel is just foolish, and not that foolishness that we've talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's just not a good idea, right? Light is meant to be exposing. But as I thought about it more and more, I wondered how often we interpret this song simply as, how do I hide my light? How do I not let my own light show out? And what is holding me back from letting my light shine? Is it fear? Is it passivity? Is it just overwhelmingness? What am I doing? But then as I thought about it more this week, I began to wonder, how much of the time is it not that I'm hiding my own light, but how often in this world are people trying to hide one another's light? If light is this innate thing that every human has simply because they are a beloved child of God, how often do we try to get in the way and try to hide that truth? I wonder how often there are words and actions that some people use that cut others down and make them feel insignificant. And then how other people see that and are willing to allow that to happen. And so I ask you, hide it under a bushel? No. I'm gonna let it shine. How often do we witness acts of injustice in this world, and because of that, people's lights are not able to shine? And so again, I ask you, hide it under a bushel? No. I'm gonna let it shine. Acts of racism, acts of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia dampen the lights of other people. Hide it under a bushel? No. I'm gonna let it shine. Sexism, ageism, all forms of bigotry and hatred. Are we going to let those lights be dampened? The truth is, when someone does a racist act or makes a racist statement, it's not just about an individual, but it is about that entire community. So when somebody makes a racist statement about somebody of color, they are making that about my children, my 2- and 4-year-old, because my children are children of color. Am I going to let that happen? No. When there's hatred towards those who are transgender or the LGBT community at large, they're not making that statement just about somebody out there. They are making that statement about people in this very room who we all love. Are we going to allow those bushels to be used? No. Acts of hatred try to snuff out that innate light of God that is found in each one of us. So as much as we don't want anyone to hide our own light, we need to make sure no one's hiding anyone else's light. That is our purpose as a church community, is to let light shine, to break through the darkness, to preserve life in its fullness, to fill out the vision of shalom. Let us be this church that makes real God's kingdom as Jesus has taught us. Amen.